Good evening, respected Yasser Nair sir, the Vice President of DPS-Modern Indian School, Principal Ma'am, Vice Principal Ma'am, Activity Coordinator, teachers, and of course, the wonderful and talented debaters around. Welcome to the grand finals of the first ever online debate organized by the Debate Club at DPS-Modern Indian School, Doha. Before we begin the event, let us take the blessings of the Almighty with a short prayer. O Lord, we thank you for your guidance and the support that you've given us during this crisis. We thank you that you've showered us with blessings and hope throughout this pandemic. Now moving on. Today we are going to socialize respecting the social distancing through this online debate. The battle of words is going to take place between a team from the 9th grade and another team from the 10th grade. The sides haven't been declared yet, and I will be doing so by taking at a random these two chits that will indicate their sides. So the 9th grade will be debating. I hope everyone can see this. The 9th grade will be debating on the proposition for the motion, which leaves us to understand that the opposing side is 10th grade. The motion on the floor that stands in today's debate is, this House believes that the coronavirus pandemic has a positive impact on education globally. Please note that the speakers will speak of 6 minutes each, and the first and the last minutes is protected. And the debaters cannot give points of information during that time. The reply speech will be 4 minutes, during which debaters cannot ask point of informations. If anyone has any doubts, please feel free to contact any of the teachers or students in charge. Speakers are requested to switch off their mics when it's not their turn to speak, and switch on their mic when it is their turn to speak. If the speakers want to ask any point of information, they can raise their hands, and subsequently they will be unmuted so that they can ask their question. Also, after the debate, speakers are requested.
Speaker, I will be talking about how this pandemic has set a base for remote learning in the future and how it has prepared us for the future. My second speaker will talk about its long-term effects and how it will be beneficial in the long term and the advantages of this. And my third speaker will summarize our case. So I would like to start off by talking about my argument. So we see that this pandemic has brought upon online learning as a main way for students and children around the world to receive education and to learn. So we see that this type of online learning or remote learning has been used in other countries before this pandemic had started as well, like USA or South Korea or China. But we see now that there is this pandemic, we see this is one of the only ways that people can still learn, that students can still learn the same way, and students can receive education in a proper way. So we see that online education is the main way for people to learn now, and the main way for no thank you is the main way for people to learn and around the world. And so we see that because in the future, at one point, as technology is our future, we see that online education was to become something big in the future gradually anyways. So online education was going to become a big part of our life in the future. And now, because of this pandemic, or due to this pandemic, we see that online education has become an immediate solution to our problems. So we see that even though we weren't extremely prepared for any type of, no thank you, even though we weren't extremely prepared for what we were to see right now because of this pandemic, we know that the online education has done us more good, because first of all, it sets a base for, no thank you, it sets a base for online learning to become a huge platform in the future, because as I had said before, technology is our future, and online learning was to become something big in the future anyways. So we see that because now it has been implemented, we see that we see that it sets a base or a platform, or it becomes a stepping stone for online
POI.
learning to become huge in the future, or to have more advancements in the future. Second of all,
POI.
I would like to say yes.
How does the proposition tell us on d- combating the problems that online education holds, such as social interaction or the cheating part during exams?
Okay, so basically we see like things about social interaction. This, what we do right now, is also social interaction. It'll be possible even online. It's not going to stop people from interacting with each other. Though I agree, under the circumstances that we are now, we're not allowed to see people face to face, but online interaction is something that can be so beneficial as it is right now as well. And things like cheating, I believe students should have the capability to stop themselves from doing things like this, or their parents should be the ones that should look after things like this. So we see that this something like this. No, thank you. Something like this is not extremely valid in this debate, because that's something that should be taken care of by the students themselves. I would like to move on. I believe that the remote learning, or this pandemic has made us prepared for the future. So we see if there were any cases like this in the future, we would be prepared for what's to come next. So basically,
Yes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, today Team Opposition decided to ignore everything my first speaker said and decided to follow their own course. And they have made many major errors, which I'll be pointing out today. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow debaters and my judges. Today, as Speaker 2 of Team Proposition, I will be stating the long-term effects and why we, Team Proposition, strongly support this motion. So firstly, Team Proposition's first speaker said nothing except a few disadvantages or setbacks to remote learning, right? So we believe that with anything, even traditional learning, even traditional learning poses a lot of challenges, right? But with those challenges, development is what helps us overcome each of them, right? We overcome each setback, which helps the development of a child in their education, right? So why do we as Team Proposition strongly support this motion? We support it because we believe that even though these minor setbacks might make it seem like remote learning is not very useful or beneficial, we believe that in the long term, the majority of people will be, no thank you, the majority of people will be affected beneficially due to remote learning, right? So our society is becoming more and more digitalized. Yes.
You talk about how the society is being more digitalized and technology is developing, right? Well, that is the exact problem that we're facing. When technology develops too much, that only causes students to face problems when it comes to social interaction and actually interact.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this debate that's happening right now is social interaction, right? Team Proposition keeps coming up and giving us these setbacks, which are very minor, and over time, no, thank you. And over time, they will be overcome, right? This is what we mean by development. And so, as I was saying, no, thank you. We see that online education is becoming more and more prevalent in society. And due to this pandemic, it has become the chief means of education, right? And we believe that in the long term, during this pandemic, all countries are forced to invest. No, thank you. Are forced to invest and improve remote learning, right? Which they didn't do before, because even though online education has been, yes, ma'am.
You talk about how countries have to invest in these remote learning, right? But what about underdeveloped and developing countries?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So we see that in underdeveloped and developing countries, even now, education isn't the best it could be, right? Even traditional schooling isn't very good, but they will keep developing on it. And we believe that the same strategy applies to remote learning too. So as I was saying, online learning, no, thank you. In the long term, even when traditional schools are opened and traditional schooling becomes an option for us again, online learning will not lose its prevalent position in society and education. Team proposition is not suggesting that online education should replace traditional education, but we are saying
most countries have very unequal education systems, and these negative impacts will be felt disproportionately by poor children. Unfortunately, many families rely on the public school system for education. Simply having the benefits of online education is not enough. Team proposition fails to understand the necessities of online education. We obviously need internet access. We need an appropriate device. You need the money to buy all of these requirements, and so many students living in rural areas in underdeveloped and developing countries do not have access to computers or the internet in their homes. In fact, in India, almost 37% of the villages do not have internet access, according to Economic Times. Without the proper technology, many students will be forced to miss out on their education until further solutions can be arranged. And secondly, let's look at people who do have access to the online education. Even then, we would see a major disadvantage. Firstly, student assessments are also moving online. In the UK, for example, all exams for the main public qualifications like GCSEs and A levels have been cancelled. Exams like SATs and JEE mains have been cancelled in India. That only leads to these students becoming less disciplined since the exams are being postponed. We'll come to that later. But we also see that students may resort to unethical means like copying and cheating in exams. Secondly, online education only leads to students becoming less disciplined about submitting their assignments or attempting a test. Students have a young, distracted, and disturbed mind. They require guidance to punctuality that only the traditional educational system offers. This freedom can be dangerous if you don't learn how to handle it. Through e-education, students are given way too much freedom, too much independence, which is not healthy for the majority of them, since they do not have enough experience due to their immaturity to handle the very same freedom. So online courses don't have an instructor who keeps telling you to stay on task. Only you yourself are responsible for your learning. So the kind of world that team proposition supports, we see students being extremely we see students being excluded from education. We see students completely being resorting to procrastinating. We see students resorting to unethical means like cheating, and that is why we're very proud to oppose.
The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 10 seconds. If everyone's ready, I'd like to invite the third affirmative speaker.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
1.2 billion affected learners are there due to this pandemic, which is 98.5% of the world's student population, and 8 countries' schools are currently open. The pandemic is forcing educators, parents, and students to think critically, to problem solve, be creative, communicative, collaborative, and to be agile. It is also revealing that there's always another way. Moving on to the rebuttals, team proposition has made numerous mistakes throughout this debate. First of all, first speaker had mentioned about how there is undisciplinary actions by students, but it's not really the fault of the form of learning, but this is a variable which is more dependent on the students themselves. Now, the second speaker admits that it's the nature of the students at particular ages which causes these undisciplinary actions to happen. And it varies from student to student. It would be wrong to blame it on online education. Second speaker had clearly contradicted first speaker's point. Secondly, that it is inefficient. But we must, even if it is inefficient, it is quite inefficient. But assuming that it is inefficient, we must give it time so it improves and develops into its best self. I'll be speaking more about this in my later speech. Next, social interactions are not there in online education. But it's impossible to have any interactions during this pandemic. It is important, but there's a plus side in the social aspect, socialization aspect, which is that students are able to spend more time with their families, which is a plus side when we're talking about socialization. So there's also another question about whether these extracurricular activities are happening in online education. But they are happening in online nowadays, which clearly states that OP is not keeping up with the global developments nowadays. Now, the only difference between the online education and traditional education is the medium of learning. The teachers and the students remain the same, so interactions actually still exist. Now, another contradiction, another wrong misconception that they had was that underdeveloped countries will not be able to fund or invest in these online education. But we must remember that these underdeveloped countries will not remain underdeveloped forever. But it seems OP has permanently stamped these countries as low-income countries forever.
POI, sir.
This pandemic opens the eyes of all the countries, whether they're developing or underdeveloping, that education is important. So they're incentivized to work more on it because of this pandemic. That would be an answer to the POI of second speaker, and also supports our case because the pandemic has a good impact in terms of incentivizing the countries. Developing countries like India are adapting to the situation. We have seen that in the past couple of months. Now, developing traditional education before online education is not possible now. So how is opposition going to improve or develop traditional education during the pandemic? I would like third speaker to answer this question. I would be speaking about the digital access further on in my speech. Now, the next rebuttal is that the deadlines and impunctuality, the deadlines are not followed and impunctuality is there in online education. But how does this not happen in traditional education? How will OP ensure that this does not happen in traditional education? The only difference between online education and traditional education, again, is the mode or the medium of learning. The teachers and students still remain the same. So this punctuality aspect still remains the same. Moving on to the major clash. Is this impact beneficial for education at all? Now, the opposition has begun up by saying that even though this is a golden era for education, technology, and digital transformation, there are delays and disruptions in the examinations and other developments in the education field. But futuristically, these long-term benefits, we have long-term benefits which are fruitful. Such things will happen on the way to ultimate success. Therefore, we must be resilient and patient. These are other values which this pandemic teaches us. We must allow this problem to develop so we can see the sides of it, so then we can analyze and conclude the suitable resolution for this problem. We will slowly get used to these problems and find innovative ways to bypass them. These are only short-term harms which team opposition clearly do not understand that they will be worn out. And in the long term, this will end up in the benefit of the students and it will benefit education as a whole. I would like to take a POI.
So you keep, you and your second speaker keep talking about the short-term disadvantages or short-term harms. Do you realize that millions of people all around the world are not able to access any education at all? And people in these developing countries and underdeveloped countries do not have enough money or enough investment to handle their economy. How do you think they're going to fund a new form of education? Please comment.
Again, these are also short-term harms because it will not persist for long. You see, the affordability and availability of online education is such that we understand that developing countries have other necessities that they must fulfill. But in the future, more people will get access to it as countries will develop these fields further. Because this pandemic has highlighted the importance of availability, and obviously it is true that many are not accessing this online education properly, or they're not having the means to do so. But this pandemic has highlighted that it is important and we must pay attention to it. And therefore, we have understood that in the long term, this pandemic has incentivized these developing countries to work more on it, to put more attention into it. And then in the end, these problems will be worn out and it will help education to reach all. Our stance as team proposition is to reach education to all. And it might be unavailable at short term, but because this pandemic has made education so important, in the long term, literacy rates will shoot up and will contribute to the national and global economic development. I would like to beg the jury to side with team proposition, because adaptation, not weakness, is the answer to this pandemic. Thank you.
The speaker spoke for 5 minutes and 59 seconds. If everyone is set, I'd like to invite the third speaker of the opposing side.
Am I audible?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Everything is a short-term harm. Everything will be solved in the future. This is the one answer the team proposition provides us for all the unattended questions we've asked them so far. We've asked them several questions, for example, the cheating part, the disadvantaged people, about how millions of people cannot even study right now despite there being two systems of education. We've asked them about how students are more to be lethargic, are to be less disciplined because of this sort of education. And yet the only answer proposition brings us is about how all of this is a short-term harm. In the long term, this all will be fixed, right? So we on the opposition believe if in the short term, if in the small time it has been implemented for, if these many flaws are highlighted in such a system, we believe in the long term, this system cannot do more good, but instead it just keeps getting flawed and flawed, right? So moreover, on the proposition side, we see a very narrow-minded side, a very narrow case side, which only talks about Zoom video calls or video conferencing or remote learning, where repeatedly on the opposition, we've asked them all about this learning through MOOCs, right? But yet again, all the three speakers failed to give us any answer. Moreover, our questions about how the cheating, the discipline, and social interaction still remain unattended, unanswered, and that is why we already believe that we won our case. I being the third speaker, who give the major clashes where both the sides have met with, and would also summarize our team's case, right? So first off, moving on with the efficiency of this technology. Is this technology really beneficial, or do the flaws actually are the flaws more negative than what the proposition tells us, right? So we've asked them continuously about the cheating and about how it's going to be multiple copying and stuff like that, right? The first speaker replies to this casually by telling us about how it's the student who has to take care, and it's about how it's the student's fault he cheats and stuff like that, right? We believe the whole purpose of education is lost when the system itself cannot handle flaws at home, right? Because let's take the example of traditional education. Even in traditional education, we see the point of copying and cheating, but we know there's a solution with teachers, with constant surveillance from the teachers, and yes, this is completely minimized. But in online education, we just see the propositions is completely throwing the point about copying on students, about how the students themselves has to take care of this, about how the parents need to be involved for students being copied. And we believe if the system cannot handle its own flaws, we believe it has more negative effects. Moving on to the point about disadvantaged people, right? So we on the opposition bring this point about how millions of disadvantaged people do not even have the basic facilities or the basic access to online education. So how does the proposition side plan on combating this? Right? How does this proposition actually provide education for all of these people? The only response we see from their side is about how in developing countries aren't always going to be underdeveloped. One day or the other, they have to be developed, right? Two responses there. First of all, the reason they're developed is because their infrastructure level is low and they cannot come out of their own crisis. So how does the proposition believe that when they themselves cannot come out of their crisis, they are expected to fund or go for an entirely different type of education system, which they have to start from square one, right? Second response is about how till the time they develop, do you really want all these millions of disadvantaged, these uneducated people to just remain uneducated, just in the hope that one day my country will develop, one day they will provide me education, one day something good will happen for me? And that one day seems very far for the proposition side, ladies and gentlemen. So coming on, rebutting a few one-liners from the speakers of the proposition, right? The first speaker comes up and tells us about how all of this sets a base for future education. This is the main way for people to learn. I'll take in a minute, sir. But we believe when this system cannot combat the flaws it comes with, cannot combat the flaws it holds, the system cannot be implemented, is of no use, or is of no good to be implemented. And that is why we believe that traditional education does much better. Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes. So the speaker says that it will take a long time for them, the developing countries, to reach to online education. But we must realize that already 60% of the world's population are online. So it will be a lot easier to make the rest of the population online because majority of them are already online.
See, ladies and gentlemen, we see from the proposition side, just for the sake of actually dashing with us, we see them coming up with these statements such as one day, somehow, majority is already done, but we see no specific evidence, no specific guarantee coming from their side. And this is why the opposition is concerned, right? Because until the proposition provides us with an actual model or an actual time being till when they are done, we believe these millions of disadvantaged people shouldn't remain uneducated, shouldn't be the disadvantaged group they are, right? Because they deserve the right to education as well. Until the time proposition actually comes with a viable solution, we believe that online education shouldn't be taken into their hands. Moreover, they also talk about how there is no other option and stuff like that. As I've already told you, but if there's a choice, the choice being provided, we believe with such flaws that the education system holds, traditional education can combat all of these, has combated all of these, and is much better. And that is why we believe we've nullified the case. Our side on the other side has completely redefined what education means, about how it's actually about overall development, about social interaction, about how students have to actually, it's not about only forcing information into your brain, it's actually about developing yourself overall with extracurricular activities. We've also told you about how students aren't very disciplined by themselves during online education courses, right? And this is a flaw for the students and for the system as well, while the traditional education actually can combat all of these problems. We've given you examples about how students become lethargic, are less disciplined, there's copying exams and cheating and stuff like that. But again, on the proposition side, we see vague reasoning and vague rebuttals to that. And that is why we believe our points stand, and that is why we are proud to oppose. Thank you.
The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 15 seconds. If everyone is set, I'd like to invite the reply speaker of the opposing side.
Shall I start?
Whenever you're ready.
Today, on team proposition side, we only see superficial and really vague one-liners, and literally no statistics or no examples and no reasoning to actually support what they're saying. So two major questions arise in this debate. Firstly, is the rise of technology what we really need right now, and what happens to countries? And secondly, what happens to students? Addressing the first question, throughout the three speeches on side proposition, we only saw throughout the three speeches on side proposition, we only saw we only heard this one statement being repeated again and again. Countries must invest in online education now. They have no choice. That is we said that is exactly why we think that the COVID-19 has caused a negative impact on education. That is exactly why we say that these. That is exactly why we say that before investing in something completely new in these underdeveloped countries and developing countries, there are a lot of things that these underdeveloped countries need to develop. There's their infrastructure, and even their traditional schooling system itself is not that developed. Before developing something completely new, they need to focus on things like these. So they tell us about they kept talking about how developing countries have to develop someday, but if this happens, this would only slow their development. In fact, if the COVID-19 has only caused these underdeveloped countries to take a major step, which only causes their development to slow down even more. They tell us about that brings me to the second clash, which is about what happens to students. So firstly, team proposition never ever talks about what happens to students, right? We never heard any benefit that we never heard any kind of benefit on their side on students, right? So that is one major flaw on their side. They only keep talking about development. They talk about the rise of technology, but we have already handled that in all three of our speeches. We told you about disadvantaged students. We told you about social interaction. We told you about the problems that students may face, like distraction, the concentration problems. We told you about how they might procrastinate, how they might become lethargic. We told you about how they we told you about the various limitations. We told you about the various limitations of that online teaching, online education holds. But we never ever heard any kind of response on team proposition side. We told you we heard no response from team proposition side to most of our arguments. And even if they responded, they only responded with vague one-liners. Like for example, we told you about how we told you about students resorting to cheating, but then we kept hearing the same thing from team proposition about how they themselves should have the capability to stop themselves. Again, that is just one of the examples. That is just one example of the various one-liners that we heard from team proposition. We literally never heard any kind of reasoning or any kind of examples or statistics. Whereas we on team opposition, we gave you many statistics for each and every argument that we brought up. We told you about we told you about why exactly online education would not stand. We told you about disadvantaged students, to which we had literally no response again. So there were many questions which were raised by all three of our speeches, which were never responded to by team proposition. So thus, I urge you to side with team opposition.
The speaker spoke for 3 minutes and 52 seconds. If everyone's okay, I would like to invite the reply speaker of the affirmative side to close the debate.
Should I start?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, in today's debate, team opposition keeps focusing on the minor setbacks and fails to look at the bigger picture, right? Which we as team proposition have provided you with. So there have been two major questions in today's debate, right? The first one is about development and whether it actually will happen. And the second one is about whether online education will get better and improve, or if it will get worse. So firstly, talking about development, team opposition fails to realize this huge point where every single system, flawed or not, just keeps improving because of development, right? And when does development become faster? When does development become more efficient? When you have no choice but to develop, when you have no other option, so you continue to develop the only option available to you, which is exactly what we as team proposition have been saying that team opposition failed to realize, right? We're saying that since we have no option other than online education, development is going to take place. They keep telling us that we haven't that there's going to be a lack of access or people won't be able to access it. Well, firstly, I would like to say that most countries will develop it because, as I've already mentioned, it is their only option. And I would like to give an example. India and Brazil, two developing countries, have decided to have launched a strategy relying heavily on the use of educational television, right? So documentaries, informational segments, explanatory videos are shown, as well as news format, especially designed for students. Students can express their questions, they can contribute, they can express their needs with videos and messages, right? And we see that, and another example is of Australia. And there's a public TV station in Australia called ORF1, and it has been offering a special education program for students at all school levels. And there is a specific times, 6 to 9 a.m., where a certain subject will be shown, right? So we see that each country is doing its best to implement proper education systems and to make remote learning the best it can be, right? And we also see that since they are giving time limits, and since they are slowly deciding to slowly coming up with ways to combat cheating, and as team opposition put it, students becoming lethargic because they don't have to follow anything, they're not held responsible. We see that slowly countries are coming up with ways to make students to hold students accountable. And while this is happening, the students also have an obligation, the parents have an obligation. So we see that it is a combined effort. We can't just say that schools are responsible. Remote learning has to hold the students accountable, right? Now, the second one is the second clash point that we had in today's debate was whether the online system will improve or whether it will get worse. Ladies and gentlemen, with absolutely any system in the world, including education, traditional education that we've known until this pandemic, everything keeps getting better, right? There are so many countries where students don't get to go to school or attend normal school because they're discriminated against, because they're not allowed to, because they come from a conservative family. And we believe that online education helps you overcome all of these setbacks, right? So right now, team proposition comes up with small things that would keep getting better with development. And as I have given you two examples, countries are doing the best they can to overcome this. So what team proposition is trying to say that during this pandemic, remote learning is just going to keep getting better and better. And once traditional schooling becomes an option for everyone to use again, remote learning is not going to lose its prevalence in society and education. It is still going to be there, which will open up a whole new range of options for everyone. And hence, I beg the jury to side with team proposition.
The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 10 seconds. So how did you guys think of the debate? Okay, so welcome back, everyone. Honorable Yasser sir, principal ma'am, vice principal ma'am, coordinators, teachers, and my dear friends. A very good evening again. So it's a matter of my great honor and privilege for me to propose the vote of thanks and express my sincere gratitude on behalf of students of the 9th grade and the 10th grade of DPS-MIS. I express my heartfelt gratitude to our beloved principal ma'am, Ms. Asana Nafiz, our vice principals, Ms. Soma and Ms. Mary ma'am, activity coordinators, and all the teachers for giving the students this wonderful opportunity to learn and share their ideas about this pandemic and showcase their talents to us. A special thank you to you, Deepa ma'am, Dipin sir, and our student judge, Fahad, without whom this event would have not taken place. Irrespective of who won the debate, we all learned something new today. So in the real sense, we all have won today. A pen is mightier than the sword. We have all heard this saying before, but we all got to see the practical aspect today. Thanks to the enthusiastic and passionate debaters who participated in today's debate. Once again, thank you, everyone.
Let's wait for the result. So how was your experience doing online debating with it?
It's quite nice. I mean, you have your ease of access, and you can do things at your own time with your own pace. I feel it's better than normal debating.
Okay. Each one of you can give your experience.
I don't mind it actually. I think it's equally effective, and it's also giving me something interesting to do during the lockdown.
That's one big advantage of debate right now.
It also made us quite aware of what was going on in the education platform.
Yeah, so you
As
could,
being students, we got to know a lot.
so you could relate it better, right?
Yeah, yes.
Having been experienced that.
But on the opposition side, we just went against what we are doing right now.
Yeah.
Participants can share their own experience of online learning. Tejasvi, can you share your experience here?
Ma'am, I feel like online learning it's pretty good. Like it's made almost as effective as like normal schooling as we normally do. But like I do miss the traditional schooling too. But the online schooling it's made quite very effective actually.
Okay, so you face no difficulty.
Yeah, mostly no
While
difficulty.
attending the. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Ananya, what do you have to say about it? What is better?
I don't think one is necessarily better, but I don't mind online learning. It's different, but it's good.
So your school takes care of your co-curricular activities too while this remote learning?
Really well.
They do it? How do they do it?
Like for example, what we're doing now that itself is extracurricular. So that's amazing.
Spelling
Yes, ma'am. Also, spelling bee is there tomorrow, so that's another one.
Okay, so whom do you think would be the winner today's debate?
Drum roll.
Both did their part, right? But still, judges have to claim as one team a winner. That doesn't mean the other team is a loser. You all did your best, and congratulations. But according to the judges, the winner is Team Proposition, and the best speaker is Vidit Dalal of 10D. Okay.
Great.
Okay, let's have an applause for everybody, for all the ones who have participated, who have taken time off to prepare, to do all these things and to make it a good success. Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, you're waiting for the results?
Ma'am, we were waiting and we already declared the results, ma'am.
Great, great. Who is won?
Team Proposition, and Vidit is the best speaker.
Best speaker. Great. Congratulations to all. Well done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm so happy that we have used this opportunity to, this challenge to explore a new way of working, and we have done well for ourselves. Many congratulations to all of you.
Ma'am, you witnessed the debate. How do you read this, or what was your experience, ma'am?
It's a new learning, so I'm very happy that our children are able to think differently, think out of the box, and have the courage to face a new situation with so much of grace and elan. So congratulations to all involved, whether it's the teaching faculty, it's the students, or the IT department. Many congratulations for a new way of working. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
ma'am.
children.
Thank you, ma'am.